Let me ask you this. Does God have a God?
So there's no church-wide belief on this, but I do believe that yes.
I believe so. I don't know the exact points of doctrine on that. Hasn't been fully revealed yet.
It'd be awesome to have an answer, but I don't know how we're going to find that answer.
Brother Kimball quoted a saying of Joseph the prophet that he would not worship a God who had not father. Brigham Young said that. In a recent video that we published, a good number of both Latter-day Saints in the video and comments that I received afterwards said something along the lines of, we don't know if this is true. It hasn't been revealed. There's not clarity about it. One commenter said, a handful of people don't represent the church. I've never once heard anyone say that God has a God. Never. Here's another comment. Okay, this video is wrong. Yes, LDS believe in eternal progression, but we don't think that Heavenly Father worships a God above him. LDS religion is henotheistic/monotheistic, not polytheistic. There is no one above Heavenly Father. I thought that was really interesting, given the fact that I have read quotes from LDS Church Leaders which say, without much ambiguity, that God does indeed have a God above himself. Let's take a look at something Joseph Smith said about this. Joseph wrote, "If Jesus Christ was the Son of God, you may suppose that he had a father also. Where was there ever a son without a father? And where was there ever a father without first being a son? Whenever did a tree or anything spring into existence without a progenitor? And everything comes in this way. Paul says that which is earthly is in the likeness of that which is heavenly. Hence, if Jesus had a father, can we not believe that he had a father also?" So it seems pretty clear here he's teaching that God has a God above himself. When was there ever a father who was not once a son? And where is there a son without a father? And in fact, later prophets of the LDS Church acknowledged that this is exactly what Joseph taught. The 10th president of the LDS Church, Joseph Fielding Smith, once wrote, "The prophet taught that our father had a father and so on. Is not this a reasonable thought, especially when we remember that the promises are made to us that we may become like him?" So not only did Joseph Smith teach that God has a God above himself, Joseph Fielding Smith acknowledged that this is what Joseph Smith taught. And so this wasn't just an early on misrecorded kind of idea. We have a statement from Joseph. We have a statement from Joseph Fielding Smith many, many years later. But even beyond Joseph, this is something that Brigham Young made multiple references to. Here's just a couple quotes that Brigham said. In the Journal of Discourses, Volume 7, Brigham said, "He is our Father, the Father of our spirits, and was once a man in mortal flesh as we are, and is now an exalted being. How many gods are there? I do not know. But there has never been a time when there were not gods in worlds, and when men were not passing through the same ordeals that we are now passing through. That course has been from all eternity, and it is and will be to all eternity. You cannot comprehend this, but when you can, it will be to you a matter of great consolation." And then what I said at the beginning, Brigham Young said in Journal of Discourses, Volume 11, Brother Kimball quoted a saying of Joseph the prophet that he would not worship a God who had not a father. If you could hide to Kolob, right here, the very last line of the first verse says, "Do you think that you could ever, through all eternity, find out the generation where gods began to be?" That is a hymn in the LDS Church talking about the place where gods began to be in all of eternity. So this idea that there are multiple gods, not just the idea that we can progress to become gods, but above us and earlier than us, that there have been generations of gods, is a well-established teaching in the church. This commenter says, it's not in our doctrine, is what he's saying. That's not taught anywhere. Brigham Young would like a word with you. Joseph Smith would like a word with you, because they did teach this. Now, I acknowledge that lots of Latter-day Saints would look at these teachings and say they aren't official teachings. They might be someone's idea. Maybe they're even true, but they haven't been fully revealed. Even though it's not considered official, you still have to deal with the fact that these prophets taught this thing. And I have to admit, as an evangelical, that idea is very problematic to me. Part of the entire emphasis of the modern LDS Church is we have a modern prophet, a prophet who leads us in this modern age. How do we know it's true? All the different Christian sects have all their own teaching, but we follow the prophet. So when the prophet teaches something like God has a God above himself, why are so many Latter-day Saints quick to not believe that? It seems counterintuitive that there would be such skepticism about what earlier prophets have taught. And I think this betrays the fact that Latter-day Saints don't really believe that these prophets are prophets. I want to read for you a section from Jeremiah 23. It's a section where God is indicting false prophets among Israel. There were a lot of false prophets in those days. And just check this out. Here's what God says, Jeremiah 23. I have heard what the prophets have said who prophesy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. How long shall there be lies in the heart of the prophets who prophesy lies and who prophesy the deceit of their own heart? It goes on and says, behold, I am against the prophets, declares the Lord, who use their tongue and declares the Lord. Behold, I am against those who prophesy lying dreams, declares the Lord, and who tell them and lead my people astray by their lies and their recklessness when I did not send them or charge them. Very similarly, in Ezekiel 13, God says something almost the exact same. Woe to the foolish prophets who follow their own spirit and have seen nothing. He says in Verse 6, they have seen false visions and lying divinations. They say, declares the Lord, when the Lord has not sent them, and yet they expect him to fulfill their word. So we have this category of those who see false visions, false dreams, who think they're speaking for God, but are actually speaking the inventions of their own mind. And when I hear teachings like God has a God above himself, they're so contrary to everything that we see in the Bible, well, that seems to me to be exactly what's going on, especially when Latter-day Saints who should be regarding these guys as prophets treat them so poorly, don't look favorably upon their teachings. Samuel, a true prophet of the Lord, it says in 1 Samuel that the Lord let none of his words fall to the ground. What he said came to pass. The Lord did not let him persistently teach false things. Take Nathan. This is a great example. When David wants to build a temple to the Lord, he goes to Nathan and says, Nathan, I want to build this temple. God shouldn't be living in a tent. And Nathan says, do what's in your heart. But that night, God came to Nathan and said, here's what you should tell David. No, you don't build me a house. I'm going to build you a house, and your son will build a temple for me. And so God did not let Nathan persistently teach something that was untrue. This plays into the entire problem of plausible deniability within the LDS Church. LDS Church apostles and prophets can teach almost anything that they want. And as long as it's not considered official doctrine, it's not binding. But man, when you consider what Jesus said in Matthew 7, I think this becomes a real problem. Jesus says to watch out for false prophets. They will be wolves in sheep's clothing. Now, if you're wearing sheep's clothing, does that not mean that you look at first glance like a sheep? I mean, a lot of people imagine that false prophets are just going around murdering people and they have terrible works. But I think the entire idea of a wolf in sheep's clothing is that they look like the real deal. They're going to look generous. They're going to look hospitable. They're going to look like they're helping people. But what they're really doing is devouring them with their false teachings. We know them by their fruit, not only their works, also their teaching. And so do you gather grapes from thorn bushes? You don't. You don't go to a source that will prick your hand and say, well, that's a good thing right there. That looks to be good fruit. So when Latter-day Saints go to their early prophets and apostles, when they go to Brigham Young and they look at his teachings, when they read the Journal of Discourses and they're pricked, they say, oh, that teaching is weird, or I don't know that we agree with that, or that doesn't seem right. That is violating the test Jesus gave in Matthew 7. That's bad fruit. And so that's that. I just wanted to make a video commenting on the fact that so many people said this has never been taught in Mormonism. It has been taught in Mormonism. And the fact that you either don't know that or don't believe that, in either case, I think that's a big problem.